We are basically just going to give some basics of abstraction and interfaces in object-oriented programming. These are topics that I could not leave out, and they are all very important. Just to remind you that I might not be able to really cover everything in object-oriented programming. You're advised to actually go out there and do lots of researches, right? So we'll start with abstraction in PHP. And basically, when we talk of abstract classes, um, we are referring to a class which defines methods but does not implement it. It basically relies on a child class to inherit this or to implement this method. For example, when we're talking about the animal class, we just maybe in abstraction, we declare the animal class, right? And then we do what? We allow the implementation of say set name, get name to be done by the person class. Okay, so an abstract class is a class that contains at least one abstract method, and an abstract method is a method that is declared but not implemented, right? So if you look at what is on the screen, you have a class called parent class. That's an abstract class. And notice the way an abstract class is defined with the abstract keyword. You see, we just call the name of the method, like abstract public function, then we call the name of the method, but we don't implement it, right? So what happens is when we now inherit from this class, we will be able to do the implementation. Now, when inheriting from an abstract class, the child class method must be defined with the same name and the same or less restricted access modifier. Um, so what I want you to actually get out of here is that most of the times when you are inheriting from an abstract class, or when you want to implement an abstract class, you are supposed to make sure that the access modifiers are the same or it is less restricted. For example, if my abstract class was a protected, then my child class that is to implement it is not supposed to be private, because private is more protected. It's either supposed to be protected or public, right? Another thing is that the child class method must be defined with the same or less restricted access modifier, like we said, and the number of required arguments must be the same. In fact, when you want to implement an abstract class, you need to make sure that the methods are defined the same way that the abstract class defined these methods. Now, I'm going to actually pull out something here and go to abstraction. So this is a basic example just to let you know what abstraction is all about. So I define an abstract class called mammal, and it has a property called name and one method or two methods called you have the get name and the printout, right? If you notice, the get name has not been implemented. What This is abstraction. This method has not been implemented, but the child class that inherits from this class, the parent class, actually implements the get name, right? So you see that this is the get name here that has been implemented, right? And I've actually defined some other basic functions here or basic functionalities here. I've defined an object of the dog class and set the name to Jimmy and then call the print out. The print out is what is inside the mammal class here, right? This print out is supposed to call the get name, but note the get name has not been implemented. It is rather implemented where? In the dog class. So abstract classes, they just define their methods and they rely on the child classes to actually implement this method. That's basically it about abstract classes. So if I, for example, try to print this out, abstraction, PHP, animal.php, sorry, PHP, dog, PHP. You actually see that the name is printed out because we have implemented the methods for the set name and the get name. Even though the mama class just defined the method, the child class now has implemented it, and that's some level of abstraction. The next thing we are going to get into is interfaces, which is almost similar to abstract classes, but the difference is that it uses the interface keyword. In fact, there are really other differences that we'll discuss about. Interfaces allow you to specify the methods that a class should implement. So they are like a contract for maybe your program. They define the various methods that should be implemented. So that, for example, if I define an interface and I send it to you, you are supposed to look at this interface and know the implementations you are supposed to do on it. So interfaces make it easy for a variety of different classes in the same way. Sorry, interfaces make it easy for you to use a variety of different classes in the same way. So I can define my interface and different classes get to implement this interface, right? So like we said, you implement the interface with the interface keyword, and you just need to define the methods. You don't implement the methods. Now, you should also note something, that interfaces do not have properties, right? These are characteristics. They don't have properties. But if you want to compare these to abstract classes can actually have properties. Also, all interfaces must be public, but abstract classes can either be public or protected. These are just some differences, because when I was explaining abstract classes, you can see as if I am still explaining the same thing, but now this is the difference. Interfaces, like we said, they must be public. Abstract classes can either be public or protected. Another difference is that all methods in interfaces, all methods in an interfaces are abstract, so they cannot be implemented in code, and the abstract keyword is not necessary. Now, even though in interfaces we don't directly specify the abstract keyword, most of these methods that you see here, for example, okay, most of these methods that you see here are abstract. The only difference is that since we are not implementing them here, we don't need to actually put the abstract keyword, right? But in abstract classes, we actually need to specify the abstract keyword, and classes can implement an interface while inheriting from another class. So I can have a person class implementing the animal interface and also inheriting from maybe another, let's say, the mammal class, right? So interfaces are a contract. This is just a recap. Interfaces are just a contract for you as a developer to know what is expected to be implemented of you. Now, to implement an interface, a class must use the implement keyword. This is basically it. So if I have my class called person and I want the person class to implement maybe the animal class, I'm the animal interface, I must use the implement keyword. So for example, you have a basic example here. This example has an interface called an animal with one method make sound, right? Now the class cat is maybe under an animal, so it implements the animal interface, meaning that it is going to bring out an implementation of what we've defined within this interface. So the make sound will echo a certain meow, right? That is how interfaces are defined, and that is how they are implemented. Now, let me take you to another example. This is a big example just to see on the screen. Maybe if I use my code editor, that will be better. So I'm going to go to interfaces and I'm going to go to animal.php. This animal.php defines one interface, right, called animal with one method, make sound. Like we said, interfaces can be implemented by several classes. It is not a good idea to put many classes in one file, even though I just did that. But it's just for example's sake. But in general, don't do this. It's not presentable. So I have my interface called animal, and this interface has one method, make sound. Now, I have the cat class that implements the animal, and it implements the make sound method in a different way. It means that it echoes maybe meow, and another class called goat implements the animal interface in a different way. You see, the pig implements the animal interface in different way, so that at the end many classes are actually working with one interface but implementing them in their own ways, right? Now this is just to see what we've done. So I've created a new method for the cat, the pig, the goat, and the mouse classes that we've defined above here. And what I've done is that I've put those objects inside an array, right? This is something we did before, how to use arrays. And what I'm doing here is I'll just look through each of the object here and print out the make sound, right? Now if I clear this and run it again, php animal PHP. So you actually get to see that different implementations are done, right? So you have the cat has a different sound, the pig has a different sound, the goat has a different sound, and so on. This is how interfaces are used in PHP. Most of the times, interfaces will be used to tell you what you are expected to implement, and they are really very necessary. They help to structure your code. They help to actually help in developer collaborations most of the time. You can actually get to implement your own interface in a different way, right? So this is what interfaces are, and this abstract classes. Please do not confuse between abstract classes and interfaces. Abstract classes are uh, a little bit lower than interfaces because they rely on another class to implement to actually do the implementation. Even though they are defined with the class keyword, interfaces are defined with the interface keyword. Abstract classes and defined with the class and the abstract class keyword. So that is the difference between them. And I just wanted to, this was just the basics, and I want you to actually dig deep into this and see the differences, see how to work with it, and so on. Maybe in your assignment, I might give you an interface and tell you to implement them. Just have to go into Google and do a lot of research on this. I think this is kind of the end of OOP, the end of object-oriented programming. Though basically we have just scratched it, and there is a lot that you need to learn. So I will leave you to actually go out there and do a lot of other research and actually get to understand this thing. So in general, we have done classes, properties and methods. We've done inheritance. We've done constructors and destructors. We've done access modifiers. We've done method overriding, and we've done abstract classes and interfaces. These were the basics or the foundations of object-oriented programming, and you can actually go ahead and do research, and I mean just do research and actually get to understand it. Hopefully this was helpful, and maybe are going to be diving into design pattern in PHP, the model view controller. You are actually going to see how to pass data between the front end through a maybe through from a view to a model, or from a view to a controller and to a database model. We'll actually get to this, but for now I want you to actually digest the whole of this object oriented programming, and we will meet again in the next tutorial.